Hey guys, carrying on for the season finale of Fargo, Season 2, Episode 10, Palindrome, and I was obviously hyped for this episode. I mean, this is my highlight of the week. There's nothing else on TV this week except for Supergirl and Jane the Virgin, which I will get to. I'm sorry I have not gone to those, yet this week. I've been very busy. I really have. I'm not kidding you guys. I'm not bullshitting you when I say I've been very busy. I've been very, very busy, and I'm going to try to get out more reviews tomorrow. I'm going to try. I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try. But I made sure that I would watch the Fargo finale because that's what mattered the most to me out of anything I was watching was the Fargo finale. I could not wait for this episode. After last week's episode, I had no idea what was going to happen in this finale, and I was perfectly okay with that. I was perfectly okay with not knowing what was going to happen here, and I was very happy with that because I really had no expectations going into the episode. So coming out of it, I was very, very impressed. By far, I don't want to know. I'm not going to say it's the best episode of the season because it wasn't. I think last week's was overall a better episode. This still was a great episode. And yeah, a lot of people didn't die in this episode, but I actually really love that the show didn't do that thing where, oh, we just kill off all these characters for no reason. Fargo was never that kind of show, and I definitely really love that. And we're going to get into that. That's something I definitely really loved about this episode. But overall, I really thought this was a brilliant conclusion. They really gave everyone the closure that they deserved. Even characters that didn't mean as much as we think they did, they still gave them proper closure. Every character really got their big scenes in this episode, and I definitely really love that. But let's just get into this episode, and thank God Fargo was renewed for season 3. I don't know if I said that in my last review, but it was renewed for a third season. I don't really know what they're going to do. I will definitely say that, but let's just get into this episode. I love the way this episode starts. In general, I love the openings of Fargo. I mean, every opening, it's just so great. But this one, by far, you can definitely tell this is a final episode because we have this narration. Now, I don't know who's narrating, but someone is saying the whole, oh, this is a true story. We don't see it typed this time. We actually hear it spoken, and we see every single dead body we've ever seen in the show. We see Rye, Otto, Dodd, Floyd, Bear, and Simone. Yes, Simone did die, but not how we thought she did. Simone did not die because of Bear. What it looked like to me is that Bear just simply left her out in the cold, and she just died of hypothermia. That's what it seemed like to me because she had her eyes open. She didn't look like she was dead. She didn't have any blood on her. So I'm assuming that Bear didn't kill her and he just let her go into the woods. That's what I'm assuming he did, which is very sad to think about, very devastating, especially when you think about Bear as a character. It really goes to the end of his arc, and just find that little detail. I love. I love that they don't make a big deal out of it because that part of the story's over. This is kind of them saying, okay, the Gearharts, we're no longer going to focus on them. They're not important. Even though they were important, that part of the story is over. Now we need to get on with the story. So along with that imagery, we see Lou. We hear it was Lou that was the narration. By the way, that's who it was. I don't know why I didn't know who it was, but the last body scene in this montage belongs to Betsy, and I was about to cry because I'm like, oh shit, Betsy. But then she opens her eyes. She's still alive, and I was surprised that she's actually still alive. She is, and she might not be well. I think she's kind of hallucinating at one point, but she did survive the fall, and she's lying in bed with Molly next to her and Noreen nearby, and it seems that she didn't get, the Smarties after all. She got the real pill. She did not get the sugar one. She got the real pill, but those pills could kill her before they kill the cancer. They're very dangerous to her. So I like that they add that little twist there, and it wasn't just simply that she took the sugar pills. You know, the show always is very unpredictable, and that's a very good example of how it's unpredictable. Thankfully, she doesn't know what's going on with Hank or Lou because she really doesn't need that, obviously. That stress, that just is not something that she needs. She's already going through a lot. It's better that she doesn't know where they are, and I like that she doesn't know where they are. She's simply asking for Lou, but she doesn't know where he is. And then we get this great narration. I love this. I mean, Kristen Milotti is probably the one actress that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, and I'm surprised. She really has been killing it all season. It's more, though, in little moments. I will definitely say that. I mean, there's no weak actor in this cast. I can't say the weakest of this cast is because there is no weak link. Everyone was great. But Kristen Malloy specifically, I feel is very underrated. She had a lot of very little moments. This, to me, was her big scene of this season. I mean, she really was incredible here. She's talking about how she had a dream. And by the way, I love the way this scene was shot. It wasn't shot like your typical scene. The screen was smaller. It looked very dreamlike. she pictures Molly growing up throughout the years. She grows up, she even sneaks a peek at Molly as we saw her in season 1, with Gus and Greta, and we see Gus and we see Greta again, and we see their son as well as Lou, as an old man, which was just awesome to see. I mean, it just makes us remember, oh yeah, we're supposed to be following the story of before. I mean, we've gotten so lost in this season that I've completely forgot about season 1, to be honest with you guys. Like I said, I want to get season 1 for Christmas because I don't really remember it and I want to rewatch it. And I loved seeing this here. It definitely felt like a dream world. And I love what she was talking about. She's talking about how all of this is going to be in technology. She doesn't even know if it's true. It's kind of like she's predicting the future. It's really interesting because she's talking about phones and how technology is going to evolve and everything's going to be, everything we're going to need is in this one little store. Very interesting stuff. I really love that. And Kristen Milotti really killed it there. But then she talked about how she also saw, I believe she said violence and turmoil, and of course, that is, of course, is Hanzee. She sees Hanzee with this intimidating look. Then, of course, she sees Lou getting strangled, not knowing if he's alive or not, and not even knowing if this is real. At this point, she's just hallucinating. And, of course, Hank, we don't know the whereabouts of Hank, and they don't tell us the whereabouts of Hank till the very end of this episode, which I definitely love seeing. We do see that final scene between Lou and Hank that ended last week's episode, and that perfectly puts us right into the action this week, which I love seeing. I love the way we start off with montages. Just the cinematic feel this entire season is one of the reasons Fargo is just such a different show from other shows. There's really no show on TV like Fargo. I mean, there are others, but if you really think about the way that Fargo's shot, the way that it's done, there's really nothing on TV like it, and that's one of the reasons why Fargo, I think, is as great as a show as it is. So we see Ed and Peggy, they're on the run from the motel massacre. Black Sabbath is playing in the background. I don't know what the song was, but I knew it was Black Sabbath. So the two flag down a car, only to have the driver immediately shot in the head by Hanzee. I mean, that just shows right away. Hanzee's coming after them, and he's going to kill him. That's when you know. So he shoots Ed. The two get away, but Hanzee's still following. And thankfully, Lou is right behind all three. And I love that Lou is just trying to control him. It's actually a pretty funny scene, I have to say. I mean, something about this was just darkly humorous. Ed just like trying to shoot. He's like, "What am I supposed to do here?" I found that kind of funny. So basically, Hanzee's following them, and it's pretty crazy. So back at the Gearhart house, we shouldn't be back at the Gearhart house, but we do go back there. We see Mike and Gail go in to inspect, and I love the way I love Mike's lines this episode. Mike, by far, I mean, he was so funny this entire episode. He was like, "People of Earth, I am home." He was talking like an alien. By the way, guys, that alien really didn't seem to have much of an effect on the show. I really feel people are overthinking it because they didn't bring it up once in this episode. Really, we'll get into that. So no one appears to be there. Mike stares at the family's legacy and photos. He flips over one old shot of a baby, and it could be Otto, for all we know. Honestly, it could be because he was the first of the Gearharts, I believe. What's interesting about this is that Mike is expecting someone to be there. It's the first time he's realizing he has no enemies whatsoever. He's lost all of them. Every single enemy that he has wanted to eliminate, minus Ed, they're gone. I mean, well, not Ed. He wanted Ed. He was working with it, I mean. But every single enemy he's wanted gone are gone. He's wanted them all gone, and he's kind of the victor right here, and he doesn't realize it. I like that Mike doesn't really realize that he's the victor right now. It's very interesting, and I love seeing that. So, very great scene. Definitely really loved it. And Bokeem Woodbine, this entire season has just been great. I've really loved his character. Ed and Peggy run to a convenience store and tell the guy inside to take off. And Ed is leaving a trail of blood, which Hanzee, who scarred from the face by the hot water that they threw in his face, obviously, he's following. And instead of immediately finding the couple, he finds Lou, who fires off a bullet. And Lou doesn't find Hanzee, but Ben shows up with his nose all bloody thanks to Peggy, because Peggy hurt him, and of course, Ben's trying to help out Lou. I've loved the pairing of those two, the way that Ben just thinks he knows what he's doing when he really doesn't. So inside the store, Ed and Peggy hear shots being fired. The two go to hide in a meat locker, jam it shut with an ice pick, and Ed doesn't look good. And I loved this scene with Jesse Plemons. I mean, Jesse Plemons also, I think it's because of how good Kirsten Dunst has been, because let's face it, out of every single actor on this show, Kirsten Dunst, in my opinion, has been the standout. She's been killing it every week. She's really gotten lost in this character. I've seen people say that Peggy is simply, I've seen people go as far to say that Peggy, this is the greatest role that Kirsten Dunst ever played. I will completely agree with that. I think she has just been killing it every single week. Ed, however, he's had moments, definitely. Jesse Plemons has had moments, but this, just like Betsy, this was his big moment here, and it was all in conversation. Something I love about Fargo is that your big moment doesn't have to be when you get shot or when you get killed. It has to be in big moments like this, because this really solidifies, I think, Ed and Peggy as a whole. He tells Peggy that he doesn't think they're going to make it out, and of course, Peggy thinks that he's just talking about getting this out of this whole thing alive. Ed coming after them. Hanzee coming after them. That's not what he's talking about, though. He says, he says, I don't actually mean that. I mean us in general. We're just too different. That line where he says they're just too different. Yes, that is exactly what we've been seeing of Peggy and Ed all season. Peggy is simply crazy. She really is. I mean, she's crazy. She has all these dreams that are not going to happen. She has all these things that she wants that are just not going to come true. And Ed's the complete opposite. He definitely is looking at things a lot more realistically. It's kind of a shift, though, because if you look back at, like, episode 5, Ed and Peggy were arguing over Peggy looking at things in a way where I don't want this, and Ed looking at things like this is what I want to happen, and this is how this is going to get done. He wanted these things that probably, I don't think he knew he couldn't have had, but I think he in the back of his mind knew this wasn't going to happen. And Peggy, in the meantime, wanted to go to this thing that she was going to go to but didn't go to. So now it's kind of a shift, and I definitely love seeing that Ed's kind of thing very level-headedly here. He reassures Peggy that he does love her, but he wants what they used to have, and they can't have that. What they used to have is gone. And Peggy seems to appreciate the here and now a little more since it secured any doubt she previously had. She doesn't want to think about the future. She really doesn't. And that's something I think is interesting with Peggy. She doesn't want to think about the inevitable future and what's going to happen and what that holds for them. That's just not something that Peggy's really thought about. I don't think that Peggy's really took a lot of thought into that. And basically, we see that Hanzee is then inside the store. Anything could happen, and then we go right back to the Gearhart house. Mike and Gail do find someone at the home, but it's only the housekeeper. And I loved the line. Mike had the funniest line in this episode. He's like, "No more." He's like, "No more." No more schnitzel, and I think it was something else. No more schnitzel or whatever it was. We gotta get some American food up in here. I thought that was just so great. I love that line. So funny. Little things like that. I mean, that's one of the things that keeps the show going. The creator of the show has said enough. The show is the perfect example of a comedy and tragedy. They use comedy in dark situations. This, you can use comedy because they're kind of the victors here. So Gail moves to kill her, but Mike stops him. The two then see a car pull up, and it's Ricky, looking to ransack the Earhart house. He wants to completely steal things, and he tries to talk his way out of the house, but Mike asks him if he knows what the definition of the word sovereignty is, and I like what Mike's saying. He's saying absolute power. Kind of like Mike is saying, I have the power now. Gearharts are gone. I have the power. I'm the one who is the victor here, and you're simply just looking down me, and I can decide your fate. You know that Mike is going to decide his fate. You don't know what he's going to do. You see that Gale this entire time has a shotgun out. Mike goes on to say that he's now the king, and it's his coronation day, which should be celebrated with an act of kindness and an act of cruelty. Since the housekeeper got her life a car and a bit of gear harmony from the cabinet, Ricky is the recipient of the latter, and they kill him. Just Gale shoots him in the chest, and he doesn't kill him. He doesn't kill him, at least not right away. And I think what's interesting what Mike said, he says, I don't want to brutalize him. He said we don't want to actually hurt him. I think it was interesting what Mike said there. So he does die, but he doesn't die right away. They didn't want to kill him. They didn't want to do something brutal, but they just wanted to kill him. Mike wanted him dead, but he didn't want him dead. If you know what if you kind of catch my drift there, he wanted him dead, but he didn't want him dead. So that was a very powerful scene. I definitely really loved it. It was very darkly humorous as well. Just everything that Mike says has this very dark, humorous tone, and that's something I love about Mike as a character, is that they've done a great job in not making him like Lorne Malvo. I was watching a YouTube video of Lorne, and someone said, a great example of how Mike is not like Lorne is that Lorne loved killing. Lorne was a dark person. Mike just does killing because he's good at it, and that really is true. I mean, I don't think Mike likes killing. You see in that scene, Mike doesn't want to kill this guy. He's killing this guy because that's what's gotten him so far. Killing people, that's what's gotten him far. That's what's gotten him to what he's been doing, and because he's killed, that's why he's been so successful, and he's gonna live that out, which I thought was awesome. So, speaking of extra cruelty, Hanzee's still hunting for Ed and Peggy, tracks the two to the meat locker, but he can't get in. For whatever reason, he just can't get in, and instead he tries to smoke them out, and we get this incredible scene with Peggy, one of Kirsten Dunst's best scenes by far. Every scene with Kirsten Dunst in this episode, just Emmy, 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 all the way. Emmy, 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 I don't care what happens. I mean, I know I've said it for the leftovers, but Kirsten Dunst needs to get an Emmy. I don't care what happens. She's gotten it for Golden Globes, she's gotten it for Critics' Choice, she's gotten it, well, she's got nominated, that is, for SAGs. I mean, she is definitely going to get nominated for an Emmy because of this scene. She was incredible here. She remembers that the scenario they're in is, we kept seeing that movie that she's watching, and we knew that movie was going to be something important because they kept showing it, and we realized Peggy remembers this is like the movie she was watching back in the cabin. Now, we learned two things in this episode. One, that this show is only taking place within a few weeks. It really has. I mean, she says that episode 8 was the morning of this episode, which, yeah, that's true. It's only taken place within a few weeks. Ed even says in this episode, Lou even says things I have to go through the past few weeks. This episode only took place, the show in general, this season is only taking place in a few weeks, which I really liked. That's something that season 1 didn't do, of course, because they had that big time jump in episode 8, which this season didn't have, and I'm glad they didn't do that because they didn't try to be like the first season. So she's rambling on about the movie and basically how someone got shot and then they got out of there. Again, just all these things that she knows she can't have, and she doesn't want to do anything about it. And Ed just dies, and I wasn't surprised that Ed died. I knew Peggy was gonna get out before Ed. I knew that was gonna happen because Peggy has all these things she can't have, and we knew she wasn't gonna have this. We knew it was not gonna work that way, and basically Ed dies, and I was really upset. But the way that you really see that Peggy's freaking out, she doesn't have time to deal with this though, because she's dealing with Smoke and Hanzee, who's still trying to get in. You think he's on the other side of the door. She pulls the ice pick from the door, goes to stab him, but it's only Lou and Ben on the other side. It's not Hanzee, it's Lou and Ben. She starts screaming about killing Hanzee and how he tried to smoke them out, and as Lou subdues her, we find out that there really was no smoke, and Hanzee was never actually in the building. That's how crazy Peggy is. She thought Hanzee was there. She thought that there was smoke. There never was. So soon after Peggy finds out that Ed isn't coming out and begins to freak out, and the scene where she is like, Ed, Ed, Ed. Because I think Peggy's realizing something here. Ed was the only thing that made her sane, if you really think about it. I mean, remember when Peggy was talking to someone that wasn't there? Who was the one that stopped her? Ed. Ed was the one that stopped her. Think about all the things that Peggy's wanted. Who has been the one to tell her, no, 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 you can't have that? Ed was the one to do that. Now that she doesn't have Ed, Peggy is going to be insane for the rest of her life, and she knows that she's not going to be normal. And I think Peggy completely realizes that she is crazy, and that Ed is the one that kept her sane, and Ed is the one that kept her from going batshit. And now that now that Ed's gone, she's going to be batshit, and it's really sad to see. And Kirsten Dunst again just kills it. So Peggy's being put into the back of Lou's car. Ben says that there's a manhunt underway for Hanzee. He also tells Lou that Hank is in the ICU, but they're cautiously optimistic. I like that we finally found out Hank's fate in this episode, because I was like, please don't kill Hank. I thought he was going to die, but luckily he is in the ICU. And Ben says he's not sure how to write this whole thing up, and Lou says, like anything, just start at the end and work his way up to the end. Ben begins to cry, and Lou leaves to take Peggy back to Minnesota. And we get this great line from Lou. He says, I don't want to hear anything about it, because for the past few weeks, everything I've had to do, I don't think I deserve to hear anything about it. And yeah, that's true. Lou's been through a lot. Like I said, this is only taking place within a few weeks, which is very interesting, and I like the way they've done that. So, in the morning, we see Noreen is still sitting at Betsy's bedside, still reading Camus, and she asks Betsy how her cancer feels, and then proceeds to explain how the author thinks that knowing we're gonna die makes life absurd. And Betsy goes on to say that she has no idea who Camus is, but he probably doesn't have a little girl like Molly. And that's kind of the thing that's, I think, has kept Betsy alive, is her daughter. Just knowing that her daughter's there, she doesn't want to disappoint her daughter. And she doesn't want to die because of her daughter. She knows she's going to die, but the author didn't have a daughter like Molly. And the one thing she doesn't want to do is tell her daughter, I'm going to die. She doesn't want Molly to know that. She wants Molly to stay optimistic, and she knows that eventually she's going to have to tell her she's dying. I like that Betsy, though, didn't die in this show, because we just know what's going to happen. We know that she's eventually going to die. We know she's going to pass away, and we know that Molly's going to be left with Lou. We know that's going to happen, and it's going to be very, very sad. but yeah, basically she doesn't tell Molly in this episode. She doesn't tell Molly, she doesn't die, and we'll get into that. But very good stuff there. I definitely like that. And then we get another amazing scene from Peggy. She asks Lou if she'll get a federal trial, so maybe she could serve time in California. Even her husband's death and possible jail time can't. Even her husband's death, it's not stopping her. She still has these needs, and Lou then goes into this great story again, really trying to tell her, you have not felt the pain that I felt. You think that losing your husband is hard? This is harder. Because, all season, Lou's been suffering from PTSD. We haven't really seen it in a while, and I think this was a great return to say, yeah, he's still suffering. And he will always suffer, and he'll always use that against everyone, which is genius. So he goes into this story about a man driving his family to safety from a helicopter. Peggy seems very confused, and Lou relates to the story to the moment where Ed said he would protect his family at all costs. It's the rock we all push men. He says, we call it burden, but it's really our privilege. And Peggy then goes into this speech about how she never wanted any of this to happen. She just wanted to be someone. And I love what she says here because it's actually very interesting. She talks about how she didn't just want to be his wife. She didn't want to just be Ed's wife, who, let's think about Peggy before this all happened. She was a beautician. She was Ed's wife, and that's all she was. He was the one that ran the butcher shop. He was the one that was going to get the butcher shop, and that's what was going to happen. She just wanted to do something that would make her recognized and not just have her remembered as Ed's wife. She didn't want to be remembered that way. She wanted to do something. She wanted a huge change, and she didn't want to kill Dodge. She didn't want to do that. She basically said that she was a victim because she's been persecuted for being a woman that can't do it all. And I do think she has points here, but yeah, she was the one that hit Lou with her car, that hit Dodge with her car, and she left him there. And we realized that she really did all this just to be somebody. If she's remembered as a killer, so be it. And they reach the state line. Lou stops to make a phone call. He calls home and he finds out about Betsy's condition. And I love the look on Lou's face here. I mean, this is the last thing you want to think about. He's just like, my life is in shambles. He literally is like, my life is in shambles. I can't do this. And I loved everything about this because just think about everything that Lou's had to deal with. This is just another thing for him to deal with. He hasn't seen Betsy in a very, very long time. The last time he saw Betsy, I think, was episode 6. Then he's been off to go after Peggy and Ed. That's what it's been ever since episode 7. He went after he interviewed the Gearharts, and then he went after Peggy and Ed, and now he gets to come back home, and I love seeing that. And now we know, oh, this is over. This entire case, it's over. He knows that Peggy and Ed were responsible for Dodd's death. He knows that Ed is dead, Peggy's alive. She's going to probably go to the insane asylum. I would assume the place to take Peggy is the insane asylum. I mean, just, she doesn't seem like the most senile. If I were to give her a court case, I would not take her to prison. I'd take her to the insane asylum. That's where I'd take her. I just think Peggy is better there. However, she is very level-headed. Like, she knows, she has plans, and she knows what she's doing, definitely. I'm not saying Peggy's dumb by any means. I'm not saying she's insane either. But she's not really she doesn't think realistically. She really doesn't. And she goes mad. I mean, this entire experience, it's made her mad, and you really have seen that. And I've loved seeing that this entire season. It's been incredible. So at a park, we then see Hanzee, and this was the perfect closure for Hanzee. And basically, he sits and watches kids playing ball, and we soon realizes that one is deaf. And I was kind of like, are they kind of referencing Mr. Wrench in Numbers? I mean, if you remember, Wrench was the one that spoke, and Numbers was the one that used sign language. And I was kind of wondering if they were trying to allude to that, because they kept showing these children, and a man just known as the Book. That's his character. He's known as the Book. He walks up. He says something about how great empires fall. Obviously, the Gearharts, his alliance with the Gearharts, it's completely fallen. And now, Mike's the one at the top. He's the one that's going to be part of this whole thing now, and he hands him a wallet. It contains a social security card with the name Moses Tripoli, and that's another link to season 1. So Hanzee says he may start his own empire. He already seems like a one-man empire to him, and he even says that he might get plastic surgery. Now, I was thinking they were going to go in the Lorne Malvo direction. I'm like, he's going to become Lorne, but that doesn't happen. He doesn't become Lorne, which I was happy about. I thought they were going to do something stupid here, where he became Lorne Malvo, because that is the only character they have not referenced the entire season is Lorne. We have not seen Lorne, and that's because I don't think any character on the show is as bad as Lorne. Lorne. Lorne essentially was the devil. Hanzee is definitely not the devil. Hanzee has a motive. Hanzee has a reason for doing these things. And I like that Hanzee is going to go do his own thing. He said he's going to take out the Gearharts. He's going to do whatever he can to do that. And we see him go up to these two children, and it's kind of like his first step. I kind of wonder if he was the one that hired Wrench and Numbers. I'm kind of wondering if that was his job that did that, because we know that Wrench and Numbers work for someone. I don't ever think they specifically said who they work for, though. So I kind of feel like maybe they worked for Hanzee. Maybe Hanzee started an empire, employed Wrench and Numbers, and maybe they worked for him. I like those little connections there. And I like the ambiguity, because it really is up to your own interpretation of what Hanzee did, and I definitely love seeing that. So, back in Kansas City, Hamish is walking and talking with Mike, and Hamish seems impressed with Mike's performance and wants to promote him. However, Mike isn't going to be king after all. Instead, he's getting a makeover and a 9-to-5 job in the accounting department. And Hamish gives him an office, sets him up with health insurance, and asks about his golf game. And this is the worst thing for Mike, because Mike thought that he was powerful, and he's not. And it actually is really sad for Mike. I mean, you thought that Mike was going to be the ruler of this empire, and no, he's getting a promotion. That's all he's getting. He's not going to be king. He's just getting another job. That's exactly what he doesn't want. It doesn't involve him killing. It doesn't involve him being in control of things. It basically is just him sitting in an office, which is the one thing he doesn't want to do. In many ways, though, that is the way for him to go. I mean, again, it really goes to the idea of fantasy over reality. That's been a lot of what this season's been about. The aliens, for example. I'm not going to say the aliens weren't there. I'm not going to say that. But it does go with the fantasy over reality part of this. You know, you have to think about, realistically. Were those really aliens? Were they just playing with us? Were they actually there? I mean, yeah, they helped out, they were the ones that stopped Bear from killing Lou, so Lou could kill Bear. But were those actually aliens, or was that simply a distraction? I'm not really sure. I think it's very interesting the way we've seen that, and a lot of this season has really seemed like fans. You gotta think realistically over your fantasy. You can have as many fantasies as you want. I've had many fantasies, but you need to think realistically. Maybe that's not going to happen. So you just need to think that, and that's a very good example that is in this scene, and I love seeing that. Very great stuff, and perfect ending for Mike. I was felt very bad for Mike, because no, he didn't necessarily deserve that, but again, he just needed to know that he needed to, move on, and I love seeing that. And then we get this great scene, which was very much like, the last scene we get in this episode is very much, and the season in general, and this story. I can't believe this story's over. I mean, when we saw the end of Mike, I'm like, wow, this is the last time we're going to see Mike Milligan. We saw Peggy. This is the last time we're going to see Peggy Blomquist. Or this is the last time we're going to see Ed Blomquist. I can't get over the fact that we're never going to see these characters again. I want to hope that there's some kind of allude to them in season 3, because I just love all these characters so much, and I don't want to not see them on my television screens, but that's just the way it is. And the way they ended this episode I thought was great, because it very much was like the way season 1 ended, although I did think it was a bit different with what's going on there. To me, this seemed more like, season 1 was more, we saw Molly and Gus get together, they started a family, they were happy, Lorne died, Lester died, that was really it. This was a lot more. The season in general was a lot more, and I love seeing that, because there still was one thing to conclude, and I completely forgot about this, and I love that we found this out. So that night we see Hank is walking and talking and coming by the Solverson house for dinner. Hank asks Lou if he's planning to put the part about aliens into his police report, and the two also discuss the whereabouts of Hanzee, because they don't know where he is, and Lou just says that he'll show up again, but he's not sure, he's sure, like it or not. So I'm kind of wondering, are they referencing season 3, or are we going to see Hanzee in season 3, because we don't know what season 3 consists of. We just know that it takes place, I think 6 years after season 1. That's all we know. So Betsy comments about her discomfort, but Hank just seems happy that the three are together. She then mentions Hank's office, of course, remember those symbols, all that weirdness that she saw, those alien things. And I liked that it was actually much different than we thought it was. Now, it looked like the direction was, I'm contacting aliens, I'm trying to figure out what's going on there. It actually has nothing to do with that. What actually is going on, I think, is a lot more interesting, and I really love that. He said that it all started with Betsy's mother's death. He said that after thinking about the ones he's seen at home and on the job, he came to the conclusion that everyone stems from miscommunication. So he started thinking about language, which is very much true. Miscommunications, that's a big part of this season. A lot of just misunderstandings. I mean, Peggy didn't see Rye. She hit Rye with the car. She didn't see Rye. Did I say Dot? I meant Rye. She hit Rye with the car. None of this would have happened. If the whole thing with Rye and the judge wouldn't have happened, none of this would have happened. So he started thinking about language, more specifically starting his own universal language. The reason he wanted to do this is because he wants to make his own universal language so everyone can communicate together, which in itself I think is beautiful, I have to say. Honestly, that's pretty beautiful. I love seeing that, and really great way to end Hank's character. I mean, Hank always seemed like the guy with the big heart, and that's a perfect example of that. I'm very happy that Hank didn't die. I really thought that Hank was going to die trying to save Lou's life, and in many ways, that part of, I think the police part of him is kind of over. I kind of feel like he's going to put that aside, focus on making this universal language. I know that they're probably going to get back into action as the police, but I feel like Hank is gonna, I don't know, I still kind of have that assumption that Hank's probably gonna die saving Lou's life. I mean, we don't know how Hank died, but I just feel like that's the way to go, basically. um and then I love the ending of this episode, just the way the season ends. It ends perfectly. We see Lou, he goes up to Molly, he asks, do you want to go fishing? A great way to end, because we know that he always wanted to take Molly out, and she wanted to and he couldn't, and she finally says yes, finally realizing that this case is beside him, he can finally have some time with his family, and ends with Lou and Betsy going to sleep, and he just says, good night, Mrs. Solverson, good night, Mr. Solverson, and let's hope there's a better tomorrow. That's the way the season ends. I thought that was a great way to end it, and I definitely really love that ending. Perfect stuff, and that's basically how this entire season ends. So overall, guys, a fantastic conclusion. There are some things I'm wondering about, though. Are we ever going to see Hanzee again? I mean, the way they end it kind of seemed like we might see him again. Honestly, I think we might see him again because we don't know his whereabouts. Again, I do feel like he might have been the one to employ Wrench and Numbers. To my knowledge, I believe they were working for Lorne. I don't know. It's been a long time since season 1, guys, so if I'm way wrong about something in season 1, just let me know, because I haven't seen season 1 in a very long time. You guys have to remember that season 1 was back in last April. That's when it ended, was last May. So, I'm very, I don't really remember season 1 at all. I remember this season. This is the season I'm going to remember. When I think of Fargo, this is what I'm going to remember, is this season. They've done a very good job of completely forgetting about this, making you completely forget about the last season and making you focus on this season. There is one thing that we didn't see. Whatever happened to Carl? We didn't see Carl. What happened to him? Charlie. Those are two characters we didn't see. What happened to Charlie? What happened to Carl? Those are the only two characters we did not see in this episode. Other than that, guys, an amazing, amazing conclusion. I loved everything that happened. I loved all the way the characters went. This season in general has been fantastic. It's been better than I could have imagined. It could have been bad. It honestly could have. I mean, they could have pulled a True Detective season 2, but they really didn't, because they really upped the ante of everything this season. They upped the characters. They made it more of an ensemble show. They added more story. They added more emotion. They added more Emmy-worthy performances. I mean, they really added everything, and that's why it was in my top 10 of this year. I am so happy with the way the show ended. I mean, this finale could have been really bad, and I really wouldn't have cared because of how good this season was. Now, again, it really is tied with the Leftovers. I have to tell you, it's right there. Leftovers, Fargo, right there. They're just that great of shows. Let me know what you guys thought of this season. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Everything that's happened this season, I think, has been fantastic. I loved everything about it. I cannot wait for season 3. I don't know what it consists of. Again, I know that it's going to take place a few years after season 3, so there is that possibility we might see Lou again. I feel like Lou is going to be the one character. Lou and Molly are going to be the two characters that we always see. Because I am assuming, and I'm just assuming here, I'm not going to say she's going to be a main character, but we have to see Molly again. If we're going back to, if we're going to go 6 years later, which is, I believe, 2011, Molly would still be with Gus, or something happened to them. I hope they don't do that. But Molly would still be with Gus. Lou would probably still be alive, because Lou is not that old in season 1. He's not. He's, 70, but he's not old. I don't think he died or anything, but we'll have to see. Are we ever gonna get an update on Peggy? I wonder if we're gonna see Peggy in the future. That would be interesting if we did, just to see what's happened to Peggy, see how crazy she's been. I'm not really sure. But overall, guys, they really did a great job as well at just not making this the Lou and Molly show. I mean, this never was that. This was an ensemble show. You care about all these characters. You want to see conclusions to them. I feel like we got proper conclusions to them, and I love that. And overall, guys, this is my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this season in general. What you think of this episode? I loved every minute of it. I can't believe it's over, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Supergirl. I know I am 2 episodes behind. I am definitely going to catch up. I will let you guys, I will catch up at some point. I don't know when, but that will be my next review, and I will see you guys for that. I am on episode 7 right now, so I can probably finish that review for you guys tomorrow, then watch episode 8 tomorrow as well, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.